Well, there is, of course, an immediate need for an elected government there, and there is no doubt about it.
In the heart of South Asia, Bangladesh stands at a crossroads. The ousting of longtime Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has given way to an interim government led by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus. But beneath the surface, tensions simmer between the civilian leadership and the military establishment. As the nation grapples with questions of legitimacy, reform, and the path to democracy, we look into the unfolding power dynamics that could shape Bangladesh's future. Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. In August 2024, massive student-led protests erupted over public sector job quotas, leading to the ousting of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. In the ensuing power vacuum, Sheikh Hasina was forced to flee Bangladesh and Muhammad Yunus was appointed to lead an interim government, promising reforms and a return to democratic governance. General Waqar-uz-Zaman, the army chief, initially supported the interim government. However, as Yunus's administration began making unilateral decisions, including the release of convicted mutineers and delays in elections, tensions escalated. Remember, General Zaman's wife is a second cousin of Sheikh Hasina, which makes the former Prime Minister and the army chief relatives. General Zaman is an appointee of Sheikh Hasina. With a career of over 3 decades, he had worked closely with Sheikh Hasina. And he was also the principal staff officer at the Armed Forces Division under the Prime Minister's office. In a significant development, Bangladesh Army Chief General Waqar-uz-Zaman recently held a closed-door meeting with Major General Adil Chaudhry, the military secretary to President Muhammad Shahabuddin. According to reports, the general may be preparing to ask the president to declare a state of emergency unless Chief Advisor Muhammad Yunus seizes what the military perceives as interference in military matters and violations of its command hierarchy. General Waqar also convened with his intelligence chief, Major General Jahangir Alam, who heads the Directorate General of Forces Intelligence or the DGFI, for an extended session to assess the current situation. Meanwhile, the military's Inter-Services Public Relations in Dhaka has prohibited all meetings, rallies and processions near Sena Nivas, the army chief's residence, potentially to prevent demonstrations by Yunus supporters. A pressing concern for General Waqar is Lieutenant General Kamrul Hassan, Principal Staff Officer at the Armed Forces Division of the Prime Minister's office. With former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina ousted, Lieutenant General Hassan now reports directly to Yunus and has reportedly become the interim leader's main military advisor. Hassan recently met with the US Chargé d'Affaires Tracy Ann Jacobson, apparently seeking American backing for the Army's top position, a move that suggests he recognizes Washington's significant influence over the Yunus administration. This meeting has reportedly angered General Waqar and his allied formation commanders, who now want Hassan removed from the army and reassigned to a diplomatic post for allegedly breaking military protocol. Sources indicate that Zaman attempted to remove Lieutenant General Kamrul Hassan on the 11th of May. However, Interim Government Chief Advisor Muhammad Yunus has blocked the official notification. The tension between Yunus and General Waqar has been building since the latter began advocating for early elections. Reports indicate that Yunus has been unsuccessfully pressuring the president to replace Waqar ever since the general started pushing for a swift return to democratic governance. General Waqar has maintained that he never sought a military takeover, which is why he initiated an all-party dialogue following Hasina's removal and supported installing Yunus as head of the interim government. However, their visions for Bangladesh's future have diverged significantly. While Yunus opposes early elections, claiming the need for substantial social, economic, political, and administrative reforms first, critics suggest he's using these reforms as a pretext to extend his unelected tenure. General Waqar, conversely, views the interim government as a temporary necessity whose sole purpose should be organizing free, fair, and inclusive elections to restore democracy. The legitimacy of the current arrangement remains questionable. There is no provision for an interim government in Bangladesh's constitution, raising serious doubts about Yunus administration's legal standing. If Hasina faced accusations of rigging elections, Yunus now stands accused of attempting to retain power without facing voters at all.
Well, at the moment, the interim government headed by Professor Muhammad Yunus is running into a lot of trouble, a lot of problems with the army chief, General Waqar-uz-Zaman, who actually, after the ouster of PM Hasina's government, put in place this very interim government, and he justified it by the doctrine of necessity. He said there is no government in place, this is not how a country can run. But he was very clear on one particular point, that this government is an interim government. It has no real basis in the Bangladesh constitution. And therefore, this government is only supposed to be there to organize a free, fair, and inclusive election, and then make way for the elected government which will come after the elections are over. But in the last 9 months, General Waqar has noticed that Professor Yunus is in no hurry to organize any election. In fact, he seems to have found one excuse after another to not have elections immediately. Initially, he said, oh, we need widespread reforms, we need comprehensive reforms to fix Bangladesh, which has fallen prey to so many different disasters, according to him. Yeah, political disaster, economic disasters, whatnot. Then he said, well, the country's economy is not in real good shape, so we need to fix that. And then finally, though he's in charge, his people have been saying that law and order of the country is not conducive to holding an immediate elections. Now, law and order is the headache of this very government which is running the show. So even at the cost of, criticizing its own performance in maintaining law and order, he is going to the extent of saying there can't be any elections now. My own understanding of the situation is Professor Yunus has no political base. He's been an economist of some kind, microcredit guru, whatever you call him. But he knows for a fact that if there are elections, he is out. So his king-size political ambition and his ability to organize a political party does not really match. So he's trying to stay on as long as possible without holding election, which is what General Waqar does not want. He has made very clear his point that he wants early elections, and then he wants the army to return to the barracks. He does not want to interfere in politics. He does not want to take over the government, but he wants early elections and inclusive election. Now, that inclusive election is not going to be possible because of the ban imposed on the Awami League now. How can you throw out the most important political party of the country and then say, oh, we are holding elections and inclusive elections?
The situation intensified when General Waqar, during an overseas trip last year, publicly called for early elections, alarming Yunus and his supporters. Since then, Yunus has reportedly been searching for a replacement for General Waqar, who has not yet completed 1 year of his expected 3-year term. According to sources, Yunus may be planning a decisive move to consolidate power. His reported strategy includes finalizing the July declaration to encapsulate what his supporters call the spirit of the July-August agitation from last year, followed by issuing a proclamation that would effectively nullify Bangladesh's constitution. This could potentially force the president to resign, allowing Yunus to replace General Waqar with Lieutenant General Hassan. Having placed Hassan in his current position after taking office in August last year, Yunus appears to have been cultivating him as a military ally.
Well, there is, of course, an immediate need for an elected government there. And there's no doubt about it. The students and the youth, backed by the radical elements who brought down Sheikh Hasina's government, are now in no mood for election. They are saying they're going to go ahead with the July declaration, which is they're going to embody the spirit of the revolution, as if this is some kind of a Iran-type Islamic revolution that has taken place, because they have not made they have made it fairly clear that they want a polity which will be based on Islamic Sharia laws and stuff like that. But more importantly, they are going to undo the 1972 secular constitution of Bangladesh. They have made it absolutely clear that this constitution, which was brought into being by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and his party, the Awami League, is, according to them, a fascist constitution which perpetuates a fascist political order. And therefore, they are going to do away with this constitution. Now, the point here is, Geeta, that if this constitution does not exist, then President Shahabuddin Chuppu goes out of the window. He falls, he will be taken down. If he is taken down, he's the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces. Whoever is put in his place as the president by this July declaration will actually remove General Waqar and these other chiefs and other important people in the positions in army, which so far is the only institution relatively less affected by the sweeping change or changes brought about by this new dispensation in civil administration everywhere, actually, judiciary, except the army, which has been untouched. General Waqar has made sure that does not happen.
General Waqar has apparently become aware of this plan and has rallied support from most formation commanders, the Air Force and Navy chiefs, and the directors general of key intelligence agencies, including the DGFI, National Security Intelligence, and Military Intelligence. Encouraged by his commanders, Waqar may now pressure Yunus to remove Lieutenant General Hassan from his position. Sources close to General Waqar describe him as having attempted to balance various political factions during this turbulent period. He has supported Yunus but consistently reminded him that the interim government's mandate should be limited to organizing early elections and transferring power to an elected government. The confrontation occurs against a backdrop of international interests. Yunus' government enjoys significant Western support, particularly after agreeing to create a supply corridor for the United Nations connecting Bangladesh with Myanmar's Rakhine province. This international backing may embolden Yunus in a standoff with the military, potentially complicating resolution efforts and raising the stakes of any confrontation. Another major point of contention between Yunus and the military involves the release of mutineers from the Bangladesh Rifles. Nearly 300 mutineers convicted of murdering 57 army officers and 16 others during a bloody uprising in February 2009 have been released so far this year. Islamist radical groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir, reportedly close to the Yunus regime, have advocated for these releases, claiming the mutineers' innocence. This has deeply upset many within the army officer corps, including General Waqar, who has consistently held the BDR mutineers responsible for the mass murders of army officers. The military leadership is also troubled by the release of approximately 400 convicted Islamist radicals, including Ansarullah Bangla team chief, which they believe has contributed to an uptick in militant activities across the country.
There's another very important factor, which is adding to this, problem between Yunus and General Waqar, which is, in 2009 February, there was this huge mutiny in the Bangladesh Rifles, the border guard force, and a lot of army officers, 57 to be precise, they were killed. 20 of their wives were killed very brutally. And, more than 400 of these border guards have been found guilty of mass murder. They were sentenced to different, terms of prison sentences. This government has started releasing them on bail, which has upset the army terribly because their officers were killed. Now, there have been all kinds of theory. People have even blamed Sheikh Hasina for that. Why should Sheikh Hasina actually instigate a rebellion which will unsettle her own government? But, Bangladesh is rumors galore. There's a field day for rumors, so anything goes. But the point here is that the army says whoever might have instigated these people, it's these border guards who actually went and killed their officers. So they are accused of insubordination, assault on senior officers, and murder. Therefore, they have to remain in jail. They have to serve the prison sentences. This government has suddenly started releasing them because demands have been made by extremist Islamist groups like the Hizb ut-Tahrir that these people are innocent. So this is something, there's a considerable amount of heartburn in the army because their officers are killed and our people who killed them are let off. And some of these people are actually, demonstrating in Dhaka in different places, asking for waiving of the prison sentence of various different, these military people who have been found guilty of indiscipline, murder, and stuff like that. And they said, this is not how a military can hold its own fort. It's a disciplined force. The last point I will make is very important, is that a lot of extremist elements, like Jashimuddin Rahmani, the Amir, meaning the chief of Ansarullah Bangla team, accused of murder, convicted of murder, they've all been released by the Yunus government because the Yunus government, his main support comes from the Islamic radical groups like Jamaat-e-Islami, Hifazat-e-Islam, Charmanai Pir, Bangladeshi Islami Andolan, and such other groups. None of the two major political parties of Bangladesh, Awami League and BNP, they want early elections. They have nothing to do with Yunus. They are pushing him for early elections. And of course, the other leftist parties, they think Yunus is doing Bangladesh a great disfavor by trying to open this Rakhine corridor, on the demands of the US, because they think this is going to drag Bangladesh into the festering Myanmar civil war.
In a controversial move, the interim government also banned Sheikh Hasina's party, the Awami League, citing national security concerns. This decision effectively barred one of the country's major political parties from participating in future elections, drawing criticism both domestically and internationally. The relationship between President Shahabuddin and General Waqar also appears to be strengthening, evidenced by the president's bold stance during a recent Independence Day speech. The president directly challenged the student movement's narrative by declaring that Bangladesh and Bangabandhu, that's Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, are inseparable. A statement that would certainly displease student leaders and their Islamist radical supporters. Such a strong public statement from the president would have been unlikely without military backing, suggesting an emerging alignment between the presidency and the armed forces. This alliance could prove crucial in blocking Yunus's reported attempts to replace the army chief and potentially extend his unelected tenure. The president's willingness to invoke Bangabandhu, the founding father of Bangladesh and father of ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, signals a potential pushback against attempts to erase the legacy of the independence movement, which has been a controversial aspect of the recent political upheaval. With Yunus apparently reluctant to schedule elections and the army growing increasingly restive, Bangladesh faces the prospect of another political crisis that could further polarize the nation and potentially invite more direct military intervention in politics. As Bangladesh approaches a critical juncture, will the interim government pave the way for free and fair elections? Can the military and civilian leadership find common ground? And what role will the international community play in supporting Bangladesh's democratic aspirations? Thank you for watching Statecraft.